Next operation you might want to do is to switch out the lens of the laser for a different focal length lens. Now, the main reason that you want to do this is to cut different material or engrave different material. So the main lenses that we have at the Makerspace are a 1.5-inch lens. So this is good for engraving or high power engraving. So the focal length, the focal distance is actually quite short. So this is good for engraving materials, just surface engraving, or cutting very, very thin material where you want to be very, very precise. So things like wood veneer, paper, very, very thin materials. The 1.5-inch lens is good for that. The main lens that's usually always in the machine by default is the 2.5-inch lens. And that's good for cutting most things, plywood, acrylic, up to about 1/4 inch thick. The 2.5-inch lens is good for that. It also does a good kind of general purpose engraving lens. And then the other lens that we have is a longer focal length 5-inch lens. And so the 5-inch lens is good for cutting through thicker material. So usually we don't go up past about 3/8 of an inch thickness in wood, but sometimes thicker acrylic can be cut with the 5-inch lens, and especially thicker foam. So if you're cutting like floor mats or thick EVA foam, sometimes the 5-inch lens is good for that as well. For engraving, it's okay, but not great. So this 5-inch lens we usually reserve for just cutting through slightly thicker material. All three of the lenses have kind of a different kerf to them as well. So the thickness of the cut, the 1.5-inch lens is the thinnest kerf. The 2.5-inch lens is kind of a medium kerf, and the 5-inch lens has a pretty wide kerf on it. So that's just another consideration when thinking about which lens to use. But again, generally use the 1.5-inch lens for high power engraving or cutting really, really thin material. The 2.5-inch lens for most operations is good. And then switch out to the 5-inch lens if you're looking to cut through thicker material. So the way that we change out the lens on this new laser head is that there's a connection for the air hose here on the right-hand side as you look at it. And so we'll have to disconnect that air hose. And then the thumb wheel here, this brass thumb wheel right on the front, loosens and tightens to actually hold in the laser tube that contains the lens itself. So usually in order to change out the lens, we have to change the height lower the table, change the height of the table a little bit. So on the control panel, you can go to Fast X or Fast Z, and then go down. And you don't have to go down very far, but you just want to be able to clear the tube from the end of the head, the laser head. And so you can use one of the other laser heads or the laser tubes as kind of a guide for how far you need to drop down. And so in this case, it's pretty good. And so what we need to do now is disconnect the air hose. So on this fitting here, the top part of this ring, or there's a top ring on that air hose fitting, and all you have to do is grab on either side of it and push down, and you'll feel it kind of collapse a little bit, and then you can just pull out the air hose, and that's all you need to do on that. So I'll demonstrate on the 5-inch lens here. So on the side here, okay, you can see how this upper part right here sticks up above the right angle connection here. And so when you push on the edge here, you can see that it collapses down a little bit. And so when you push down on that ring, it'll let the air hose pop out. Okay. And then the next thing we need to do is to just loosen the thumb wheel here. So loosen up the thumb wheel and be sure to support the laser tube underneath so that it doesn't fall out and bang on the table. So support the bottom, loosen that about half a turn, and then the laser tube should pop out of the bottom. Okay, and so once you have that, you can go ahead and switch out for one of the other laser tubes. So in this case, I'm going to grab the 5-inch lens. And so on most of the lenses, the idea is that you slot it in there, push it all the way up until it stops, and then tighten that thumb wheel again at half a turn back until it's just thumb tight. You don't need to go very, very tight on that. Okay. And then the next thing to do is just to hook up the air hose again. And so this is actually even easier. All you have to do is push that in until you kind of feel a little bit of a click down at the bottom, and you're all set. Okay, so I'm going to switch out the 5-inch for the 1.5-inch lens, which is a little bit of a different beast. It just has a different stop point on it. So again, I'm just going to grab the edges of that air hose connector, pull it down, pop out the air hose, half a turn on this brass knob, lower that down until it falls out. And so on the 1.5-inch lens, what you'll see is that the collar on this one is quite a bit shorter, and that's because we need to get it very, very close to the workpiece. And so on this one, all you have to do is push this one in until it bottoms out on that, the 3D printed collar there. And then again, just push in that air tube until it snaps in, and you're all set, ready to go. When you're done, the best practice, if you do change it out for a different size lens, is to go ahead and revert back to the 2.5-inch lens once you're done with the other lenses. So again, just revert back to the 2.5-inch lens when you're done using either the 1.5-inch or the 5-inch lens. Okay, so after we've set the origin, the next thing to do is to set up our Z height. And so this allows us to adjust the height of the bed itself so that it is at the optimal kind of focal length of the laser lens that we have on the head. So in this case, I've got kind of our standard 2.5-inch lens loaded up there. And so the idea here is that we have a height gauge with a notch cut out of it. And so you can see that notch right there matches up with the notch on our laser head. So the idea is that you want the edge of this kind of triangular part that sticks out of the edge here to match up with the notch in the height gauge. And so that height gauge, or that notch on the head itself, goes all the way around in 360. And so you can make this measurement in any direction. You can make it from the left, you can make it from the right, you can make it from the front, you can make it from the back. It doesn't really matter. And so the idea here is that we'll use on our controller, we'll switch it to, usually I start with fast Z. So we'll hit that first button on the left about 3 times to get to the fast Z mode. And then we'll use the up and down arrows in order to raise and lower the bed. And so you want to take kind of slow movements here until you get close. And what we're looking for is that notch to be kind of right on the edge there. And so if you want to get it exactly perfect, usually fast and X and Y can get you there. But if you switch one more time on the controller, on that first button, you'll get to slow Z. And that will allow you to make really slow movements in the Z direction until you get that notch right on the edge, so matching on the collar on the head of the laser. And so once you're there, you can leave that. You can take this and put this back on the wall. And then you're ready to cut after that. So once you've got your design uploaded in the computer and set up, you've got your origin set with the X and Y, we've got our Z height set, and we're ready to go.